Neurofeedback and transmagnetic stimulation, also known as TMS, have been extensively studied in a number of disorders, including ADHD, depression, and anxiety. However, over the last 20 to 30 years, there have been an increasing number of studies conducted on these treatments for obsessive-compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD. There are mixed opinions on whether these treatments actually work on individuals with OCD, and more research is needed to make definitive conclusions, but it's still an interesting topic to discuss as it is a growing area with mostly successful results so far, and it could potentially be a very common treatment in the future. First, let's discuss what OCD is and what causes it. OCD is an anxiety disorder that affects 1 to 3% of the general population. It's characterized by the presence of intrusive and distressing thoughts or concepts, obsessions, and ritual behaviors known as compulsions. The cause of OCD is still somewhat unknown. Many studies suggest that areas of the brain with abnormalities such as the orbitofrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, basal ganglia, and thalamus are all involved in OCD. However, this is not definitive. OCD can also be inherited, but this is only a partial factor responsible for causing the disorder. Abnormalities in neurotransmitter systems that send messages between brain cells are also involved. These include chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, and glutamate. Because OCD is heterogeneous, it's extremely diverse and difficult to characterize individuals into specific subgroups. But recently, a dimensional approach to dealing with heterogeneity within OCD has been proposed, where 3 to 6 obsessive-compulsive symptoms that co-occur represent specific groups. For example, worries of germs and contamination tend to co-occur with cleaning compulsions, and the desire for symmetry tends to co-occur with ordering and arranging spaces. This can greatly assist people conducting neurofeedback and TMS on which areas of the brain to stimulate in relation to which subgroup they fall under. There are various types of treatment available for mental health disorders, including psychotherapy and medication. However, neurofeedback and TMS offer a non-invasive and drug-free treatment, but it is quite costly. So let's discuss what these treatments consist of. Neurofeedback measures real-time brain activity, called electroencephalography, and allows the participant to learn to self-regulate his or her own brain activity using games or videos. By doing this, the participant can directly alter the underlying neural mechanism of cognition and behavior. Neurofeedback is performed by placing electrodes on the scalp and monitoring brainwaves on a computer, which can then reveal what specific brain activity results in symptoms of OCD. Transmagnetic stimulation produces electromagnetic pulses to specific areas in the brain in order to regulate outer and inner layers of the brain. It's administered using a wire coil that is placed over the target brain region and can reach 2 to 3 centimeters deep into the brain. A few different types of TMS, including repetitive TMS, which uses repetitive pulses, and deep TMS, which targets deeper areas of the brain. In both TMS and neurofeedback, patients remain conscious and there is no anesthesia required. So now let's take a look at some of the results from clinical trials. One study from 2011 followed 36 individuals with OCD who underwent neurofeedback training. Out of the 36 people, 33 showed great clinical improvements. That is according to the Yale-Brown Obsessive-Compulsive Scale. According to interviews with those individuals and their family members, 19 of the subjects maintained improvements in OCD symptoms. These are positive results, however the subjects could have been followed for a longer time in order to really see the long-term effects. In another study, 68 patients received a deep TMS for 6 weeks, and by the end of it, patients' scores on the Yale-Brown Obsessive-Compulsive Scale decreased significantly. Furthermore, 47% of patients responded to the treatment and 60% experienced at least a partial response. Another study consisting of 21 patients with severe medication-resistant OCD were administered deep TMS over the medial prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex 5 times weekly. Of the 21 patients, 16 responded, and of these 16 responders, 8 remitted. Many recent studies reveal positive results, but there are many limitations that render these studies unable to form conclusive evidence, including the heterogeneity among individuals, methodology limitations, and the amount of time spent on the study, just to name a few. Furthermore, there are no 2 studies where every factor is the same. Things such as sample size, target brain area, active and sham studies, number of sessions, and patient characteristics are different among every study. It was actually very difficult to find recent studies that conjured poor results. The only ones that showed negative results were from the 90s and early 2000s. However, these are quite outdated and therefore not really relevant. It can be assumed that improvements in knowledge and technology can account for the increasing amount of positive results, which is a great sign for the future of these treatments. Every individual is so unique, and with trials such as these being relatively new, it makes it difficult to draw conclusions. Only small sample sizes have been tested so far, which doesn't give a great outlook on the larger population. Therefore, much further testing is needed to form scientific conclusions. Neurofeedback and TMS does exist in Australia and has produced many positive results so far. Unfortunately, there is very little cost rebate in Australia, as Medicare nor do private health funds support these treatments. With more funding and availability for a wider population, neurofeedback and transmagnetic stimulation have a lot of potential.